Hey, good morning. Welcome to our second session for our beautiful track of architecture and DevOps. We have with us Yishai Beeri, and he's today talking about not 5, not 10, but 17 metrics to accelerate delivery without damaging the culture. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Max. Excited to be here. I'm Yishai Beeri from Lunar B, and I'm going to talk about metrics, about how to measure and accelerate delivery in your development team or organization, or even sometimes personally as a developer, and how to do that without damaging culture, without creating tension. It's an art about what to measure and the ways to do it. So LinearB is a startup focused on developer workflow optimization, and we're looking at the question of what is developer productivity, what are the real goals of development organizations, how to measure those, how to optimize the workflows for developers so that at the end developer experience is enhanced, developers are happy, production is up, managers are happy, and everyone gains. So everyone wants to talk about developer productivity. It's becoming a hot subject with a lot of development leaders that understand that this is something that needs deliberate attention. Um, there is so much moving parts in a development organization. A lot of very talented individuals, finding the way for them to collaborate in an optimized way and to um, push productivity forward, but also happiness, and that these go together, is becoming very popular. We are running the Dev Interrupted community, which brings together leaders across the world for that care and talk about everything related to development and leading development organizations. So this is a subject that is interesting to you. I invite everyone to join Dev Interrupted and continue the conversation there. So the first question is, what exactly is value that is delivered by an engineering team, by software developers? This is a set of changes to the code base that create some value. And the next question is, okay, how do we talk about this? How do we measure this? How do we even agree on um, uh, output, or what is the value that has been delivered? So if you look at what engineering talks about, typically engineering tends to measure itself through lens of throughput, things like story points or how many PRs we merged, very technical and sometimes misleading ways to talk about direct output into the code base, and very hard to capture the value there. Um, there is the question of output, which becomes more interesting, like what are the new features we have delivered? Did we hit our commitments? Did we make um, the right changes in the right time that we communicated, so that the other parts of the organizations like sales and marketing and customer success can reflect back to the users and customers, and was that done on time? And at the end of that chain is the final outcome, which is something that lives mostly on the business side of the house, which is what is the revenue that our organization is making while being able to sell or leverage those new features or the better product. Are our customers satisfied? Obviously, this also relates to quality, but also, did we work on the right things, right? Maybe our engineering is very efficient. We're working great. We have a ton of output, and we're not building what customers want. So these three major lenses to look at engineering value also highlight the difference in how engineering and business measure and talk about the value. So this is a backdrop to start the conversation about measuring. So you want to start measuring, you want to get data driven, but there is a caveat, there is a trap. We've heard this many times. When you tell developers that you want to get data driven and measure these things, let's talk about the value that we are creating. Let's talk about the outputs, the outcomes. There is a natural reaction saying, "Oh, where someone is rolling out a metrics program top down. Um, they are going to be performance managing me for my performance as a developer. How can my artistic work be measured even or counted? And um, am I going to be stack ranked? Like if you put all the developers on a list and start comparing them, naturally your eyes go to the bottom and the top, and who are the best developers, who are the worst developers. And most of my talk is going to be about why this is the wrong way to approach it, and why you should take care not to fall into these traps, not compare individuals, but find other and better, more meaningful ways to measure the productivity and the effectiveness of the dev team in a way that is conductive to your culture rather than the other way around. So some of the things to avoid, the anti patterns, are a focusing on individuals. We all know measuring direct value of a developer is extremely hard. Um, there is so many soft things like the way this developer interacts with their environment, their skills. A lot of the smart developers think hard and then do a little, rather than writing a ton of code, which may be useless or um, actually create debt. So direct measurement of developers is both hard and wrong, and it creates a ton of cultural problems. Um, Trying to find just one or two what's key metrics that will reflect everything and all the complexity in the development process is another fallacy. You need to be multidimensional. You need to look at multiple things at the same time to be able to. Um, Another common fallacy is measure what's easy to measure. Let's use a metric that's easy, like number of commits or number of PRs. Easy to measure, but you get the wrong behavior. If you are measuring for number of, I don't know, lines of comment lines in your code base, you will get more comments, not necessarily the desired outcome. Um, so focusing on what's available rather than what's right is another fallacy. And then the whole notion of metrics as a tool for manager, we see that as a common wrong thing to do, where you say, okay, managers want metrics, they want to measure, they'll build a dashboard, and managers will visit it once in a while and see what's wrong. Um, your value as a development organizations is in the developers. The effectiveness and efficiency or inefficiencies or bottlenecks are in the hands of the developers, and the developers are the key to improving and to getting a great team that with great delivery and great developer experience. If you leave this in the hands of managers, you will get all of the damage, the cultural damage, and very little of the gains. And I'm going to enhance a bit on that later. And finally, if you have metrics that don't include the right context, like what really is the meaning of what I'm measuring here and what's the context that drives it, or you have metrics that there is no way to do something about them. There's no workflow you can improve to actually get better. These metrics are going to be very lacking and a very weak tool to improve for the dev team. So I'm going to focus my talk about metrics that have both the context and the workflow component to help not just see a problem but also fix it and improve it. So the metrics that I and the dev leaders we work with basically go back to all the time are focused in four areas. Um, we're talking about the efficiency. How efficient is the team and the organization in delivering new value? Some of these metrics live in the quality land. When we deliver, what is the quality of our delivery and of the artifacts or the outcomes that we deliver? Um, there is an area that measures and understands the priority, the focus, the context switches, and so on. And finally, some metrics around the team health and well-being. All of these together, these are very different ways to look at the same questions, and you need that complexity and that coverage of different areas to get a good picture of what's going on. Um, so everything I'm going to talk, like say about metrics and measuring and understanding the delivery of value through code changes. Always keep in the back of your head the alignment to the business. Um, So, the business wants new features. Customers want features or capabilities or bugs fixed or better stability. So, um, the more you're aware of that context and look at metrics that at least are a proxy or a predictor of the real being delivered, the better you'll do. New features are very hard to measure. Or if you're measuring revenue or new business, that is a very um, mixed signal that is very late. So you want much earlier signals for that, which are going to be proxies for the actual value that in the end is the outcome, such as the features, or sorry, the revenue, new customers, customer satisfaction, and so on. So always keep those in mind when looking at metrics. Number one metric, and probably the most important for a dev team to start with, is cycle time. This is how long it takes the team to take a piece of work from inception, which typically we look at the first commit made on a feature branch or a bug fix or whatever. So the first commit on the branch, all the way until that piece of code, that branch, which evolved into a pull request or merge request, got merged into the code base and eventually was deployed and is now serving users. It's in the real world creating value. How long is that cycle? If you have short cycles, then your team is able to probably slice the work down to small chunks. Otherwise, it's very hard to create short cycle time. You are efficient in communication and coordination because a lot of moving parts need to happen for the code to get reviewed, approved, merged, and then deployed. So you've nailed that, and you gain the ability to learn fast from those additions to the code base, because your code, your changes have already met the users. There's now feedback. If things don't work, if things are creating great satisfaction or great feedback, all of these things feed back into the next chunk of work you'll do. And it provides a much faster learning cycle than building something for weeks and then deploying it over months and only then learning from everything you've done. So that is a primary metric. If you got this right, you are already way ahead of most teams and well on your way to be very effective and very efficient as a team. And obviously, because for to get a piece of code committed, merged, and deployed, you need multiple players to collaborate here. Um, the next four metrics are the components of the cycle time. So cycle time is split into four main components. There's the coding time, which is from the first commit until I have issued my pull request or my merge request. This is typically a single person, typically one developer, working on an item. If the item is broken, if the work is broken into very small chunks, I have a chance to complete the coding relatively quickly. If I don't have a lot of WIP, I'm just working on one thing instead of 10 things at the same time. Again, my coding time will decrease. This is all elapsed time. This is not working time. Time has elapsed between when you started until you finished. So if it's taking me 2 days because I'm working on three things in parallel, we all know that context switch is detrimental and that having too much work in progress and too many things is not good for developer productivity. Coding time is a great signal for those. Then we have pickup time. How long is this pull request waiting for someone to begin reviewing it? Here, there's a pull request or some sort of review cycle. This is about communication and coordination in the team. Am I getting quick response, and then everything is still fresh in my mind, so I can understand the comments and requests for changes, etc. And I don't have to remember, oh, what did I do here in this pull request that I'm only getting a review for 3 days later. The review time, the whole dance between people for making changes, making comments, responding to those, finally coming to an agreement, approving the pull request, and merging it. So again, a team effort, a lot of coordination and communication. And if we're efficient, we're able to drive this down to hours instead of days, so that everything is fresh in everyone's minds, much less context switches, and we have pushed forward the value. Finally, deploy time from merge until when the code actually lives in production in the hands of customers. This obviously relates to CD practices, but the faster you're able to deploy merge code, the less risk you have with code that is in the code base but is not live, the better learning that you have. You probably to get this really down to short periods, you will have mastered automated testing so that you have confidence to do the continuous delivery and so on. So this is a good um, indication of mastering quality and delivery practices. Altogether, you see how cycle time and its components really wrap around the entire dev process. If your requirements are not clear, coding time will suffer because I start coding and then I have to go to get clarifications. If your communication in the team is not good, pickup and review time will suffer. If your underlying code in infrastructure is not robust, you will have difficulties in the review and merge, and that will bubble the time for review time. So really great metrics that measure the team and the organization, not individuals. And if you get those right and you're able to drive cycle time to short, below 2 days or even less, typically that means you are in a good place in terms of productivity, and your developers will be much happier. In our data science team, we have analyzed a lot of data around um, how pull requests look and what is the review cycle, what's the actual behavior across a very wide range of teams, typically in a commercial setting. And we see that about half of the PRs are idle for half of the time they're open. And when I'm saying idle, it means they're in no one's mind, no one's working on them. They're basically context switched away. So much time is spent basically in doing nothing with these PRs. Um, and this means a lot of context switches getting them back into context to get to review them, to respond to reviews, and to eventually merge them. Um, and a third of the PRs are idle for almost 80% of the time. So the PR cycle, the review, like from when the PR was created until it was merged, that is a crucial piece of productivity that a lot of the organizations are struggling with. It's hard. It's even harder when we're all remote and we're not in the same room. People compensate with manual Slack communication and other, but it's a very difficult thing to really drive down. And this is a lot of time wasted and productivity wasted and needless context switches. Um, so this is basically the motivation to say this is where you should focus, and this is where typically you have a lot of easy improvements to make to really drive cycles down. As an example of a way to help the team, and I'm talking about some workflow here. So you're seeing here an example of how Linear notifies the team that a pull request is waiting for review, and it's already waiting too long. So this is a pull request that's been waiting for 2 days, and by letting the team know, hey, this pull request is waiting, it's now over some threshold which the team has set for these alerts. Now the team can respond and fix it. They don't have to wait for the metric to tell them that in the last month there was a problem in pickup. They can fix the problem directly on the single PR by just going and reviewing it, beginning the process, and pushing things forward. So the metric is coupled with workflow optimization and tooling that lives in the very tactical land, help developers with their day-to-day decisions to fix things before they become a problem. The next metric is PR size. So I mentioned in the cycle time how important it is to chunk your work to small pieces so that you can deliver short cycles of quick changes rather than monsters. I think every developer has seen and maybe also sinned in creating huge PRs. The size of the PRs that the organization is and the dev team is working in is a great leading indicator for cycle time, and it impact on the efficiency of the team, the risk in delivering those PRs, and eventually the risk and quality. If all my PRs are small, they're all isolated, rollback is easy, deployment is not risky, and um, the pickup and review times will also be much faster. So leaning towards many small changes rather than huge changes, wherever that can be avoided, is a great thing to track and a great leading indicator for other efficiency metrics. In our research, again from our Lindery labs, shows that PRs that are small get like their review time and their merge time is much faster than the large ones. This is a non-linear effect where um, if your pull requests are small, they will be picked up faster, get comments faster, get merged faster, and result with less code churn and less changes. So really look at and to be aware of and to track and improve on your PR size. The next one is deployment frequency. So um, teams that are functioning well and are able to deliver and deploy to production with high frequency, multiple times a day, maybe CD, even once or twice a day or once or twice a week, are so much better than the teams that are able to release only once a quarter or once a few weeks. If there's all the gains are about reducing the risk of a single deploy and the chance of breaking things, and a much tighter learning loop um, from what we've delivered. Not to mention the value goes out faster. So the net time that this new value affects the world is higher. So wherever possible, reduce the increase the frequency of deploys and measure that, track and keep improving on the frequency in which you can deploy. I'm going to move to quality and talk about some of the metrics that impact the quality of your product, of your code. And of course, this is the business requirement. You want your customers to be happy. Quality issues typically, again, have a nonlinear effect on customer happiness and satisfaction. So a great feature with not so good quality is probably going to damage you more than help you. So a great leading indicator and a metric that helps you predict quality issues is the rework and refactor rates for your work. In this case, measuring all the changes made to the code base and understanding, is this like new code, new value, new flows? Are we replacing existing code, refactoring, which is typically an investment in better infrastructure that will enable better velocity in the future? And then rework is when we keep changing the same pieces, the same lines of code. They only made it into the code base, and then after a week or two or three, we're all already changing them. If that percentage is high, um, then you have a code churn problem, and you are correlated with buggy sprints, and this is a leading indicator of quality problems. If the code is not able to persist, and you keep needing to change the same code in very short cycles, then that is an indication of a quality problem beginning to happen. So another example, looking at risky branches. So a workflow automation that alerts the team, hey, there is a pull request here with a lot of refactor and rework in it. Most of the code is changes to existing code. This is risky, and it's also a large pull request. So you see here like 800 per change. That together, this combination represents risk. And now the team can respond in real time by taking another look, maybe doing some more reviews, ideally splitting it up. But even if not, just making sure that they're aware that this is a risky area, maybe do some more testing, maybe alert QA, whatever the team decides to do, being aware is a great way to mitigate the risk. And sometimes you can't or don't want to avoid large PRs with a lot of refactors. Sometimes that's what you need to do, but just be aware of the additional risk at the team level. Another workflow and metric accompanied to it that you want to look at is those changes made to the code base that are not getting the right review. So sometimes organizations and teams are not able to completely enforce a review process. Being able to measure that, see how common it is that material pull request made it into the code base without getting reviewed by peers is a another great thing to track. And with workflow automation, you can get notified. So maybe you do a review post emerge, right? If you get notified as a team that this merge just happened, maybe someone can go and take a look after the merge and see if a problem was introduced. Um, Review depth, another metric that helps understand as a team how deep do our reviews go, how many comments in what is the kind of conversation going on in the PR reviews. Um, are we just a rubber stamp that every PR gets looks good to me, which misses the point? Um, are we having an impact in our reviews? So being able to track that is another leading indicator for quality. Peer reviews are a great quality gate if done right, if done with impact. So another important thing to measure. Finally, I'll talk about priority focus. So um, apologize here for the width of the slide. Planning accuracy. This is maybe one of the key um, metrics that also translates well into the business land. If we, as a developer organization or a team, commit to some scope and some time, we need to be able to measure how well are we doing in planning versus the execution. How well are we committing on what we promised? Um, so if we are running sprints, you can see here an example that measures the delivery of the sprints based on what did we promise, how much of that did we deliver, how much additional stuff we delivered that was not promised, and get a good grip on are we getting better at delivering what we committed to. This is important for the business because so many other things and moving parts rely on the timeline and the commitments. Um, this could be project based, this could be sprint based, but having a good way to track and learn how to improve your accuracy has tremendous business impact. Um, so maybe very agile developers can work without planning and without commitment, but typically at the end, business needs to have some visibility of what's coming, and it's even more important than being able to do more features. So when we ask executives if they care more for predictability than for total throughput, predictability typically wins. It's an important thing to remember, and important thing for the dev team to be aware of and to measure directly and improve it. Um, so another related thing is when looking at work focus and shadow work in the broader, like including the product owners and managers in the conversation, our work, the development work, even if done very efficiently, has to align with what the business needs. So are we working on the right stories of the sprint or our board or whatever way we prioritize things? Are we making sure that what we developers are working on is actually reflected in the project management system? So many cases, and we've seen up to 30% of Git work that is basically not mapped back to Jira or project management. So this is shadow work, product planners, even even in the dev team. Typically, these branches are not well communicated, and so they're happening. They're actual work. They're probably useful. No one knows about them except for the that are working on them, and they're not feeding into any kind of prioritization loop. So being able to make sure that we measure this and we make sure that all of our Git work is aligned to project management or reflected in project management, and also the ability to understand when we look at the actual detailed timeline of what people are doing, are they working on the important things? Is our effort focused on what's important? So these are another two areas that are important to look at. And finally, two metrics that give us a good indication of the wellness and balance in the developer team and individual developers. So this is WIP and number of days worked. So WIP is basically how many things does a developer have currently or a team that are in the air. This is number of branches that are still under active coding or waiting for review or under review. If too many, this means this person has to juggle too many things a lot of context switches. Some of these are probably going to suffer, and developers tend to feel much better when they have a few focused items than when they have to manage so many moving parts in the same time. So also good for cycle time to have less whip and split the way you're working on items so that you have ability to focus on a few rather than a very high whip, which leads to burnout at the end, where I have to constantly juggle. I'm always behind, and so on. The days worked is another angle, which talks about people um, making changes to the code base and basically working on weekends, or not taking days off. So you see here an example where if the sprint has like a 22-day sprint and this person has been committing code on 21 of these days, that means they're not taking weekends away, getting back to the code base. And in some places, this is a problem that you need to be preemptive about and make sure that developers are taking care of themselves, even when there's pressure, even then when there's a lot of incentive to get more done. So being aware of these individual and team health issues is important. And we see that as an important web metric to track. So just a few closing words about, first of all, to get started. If you want to get started with measuring and getting some data into your development team to understand what's holding you back, I gave a pretty long list of things that you can get, that you can do. But the crucial piece of advice is to, just get started. Having some data of those, like with those principles of measuring the team and not individuals, and using the measurements as a tool for developers and not for managers. If you do anything in these lines, you're already better than not doing anything. So just get started. I would say that was the single piece of advice. I want to show a few more advanced examples of complete flows that go beyond just measuring, like how does measurement feed into improvement. So the example here is that you can use cycle time to identify bottlenecks. For example, your pickup and mostly the review in this case is very long. 5 days spent in the review is a bottleneck for the pull request and is killing my cycle time. I can, at the team level, talk about goals, and let's decide as a team that we want to start and finish pull requests in 3 days and not in 6 days, or like whatever matches the way we want as a team to agree to work with. So being able to track the goal, being able to track how well we are performing with this goal. Are we violating it? Maybe we need a different goal. And then being able to get alerts whenever PRs begin to violate or breach the working agreement in the team. That is a great cycle for improvement. So we decide what we want to do. We have tooling that lets us get there. And once we have mastered that piece, we can improve the goal and make our PRs, get them to merge in 2 days rather than 3, and so on. So that is a continuous improvement motion. I mentioned a few examples of the workflow automation and how this, the like notification for developers. So in LinterB, we use a smart Slack and MS Teams bot called WorkerBee that basically has this role of helping with the communication and coordination. You saw some examples earlier in the slides, and I'm going to give a couple more. This is all geared to helping the developer make the right decision, work faster, deliver, get their PRs merged faster, and avoid all kinds of boring and non-dev tasks that need to happen, but developers don't like to do. So a couple of examples. If someone approved my PR, I get an alert telling me, hey, this is now waiting for you. No need for the developers to start slacking each other or to run manual and broken communications. And since the action is very clear here, I have a button that I can just merge it directly from Slack. So up to me as a developer, I know exactly what's in my PR. It finally got approved. I know if it's the right thing to do now to merge it or not. But if it is the right thing, and in many cases that's the thing to do, I don't have to go to a different place and hit another button and you just save me 10, 20, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and everything moves faster. So reducing context switches, reducing application switches, really makes developers happy, and the metrics will improve as a byproduct. Um, an even more exciting example is there are so many small PRs with just the one or two lines of that have changed, very small diffs, and Workerbee is already alerting me that someone has requested my review on a PR. Right, Workerbee takes care of all the communication. So in this case, just put the diff directly in my face and let me approve it with one click. I don't have to go to GitHub and take a look there. If it's that simple, this can be done in a single click. I can always go to GitHub using the request changes button and do the regular flow. But for many of the PRs, this becomes just a quick response in Slack, which again shaves a lot of time over the day for developers and streamlines the cycle. And finally, the last example I'm showing here, this is about automating the task and also solving the shadow work problem. So many times I'm working on something, I find a small bug or a quick refactor, create a branch, open up PR. This is important work. It's not in Jira. It's not tracked anywhere. Or I'm working on something, but I didn't link it back to the story with using branch names or whatever. Workerbee will let me know, hey, this pull request doesn't have the right context, and with one click will create the Jira ticket for me, saving me the need, which I know all developers love going into Jira and creating stories or tickets to reflect their good work. Our perception is that my work should speak for itself, right? The pull request is my work. Will require me as a developer to go and type in more description about it in some system to track it is work that most developers don't want to do. So one click, I'm done. Product managers and data owners are happy as well. Everyone is happier. Move on. These are examples of how we bring the workflow automation to augment the metrics and help the teams improve. So open for questions. Happy to answer any question in the chat.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful.
Thank you.
I see the first question popping up. The Slack integration, does it support more than one reviewer's need or more complex per check rules?
So obviously, we're always improving this. Yes, the Slack integration and the Workerbee bot are aware of who needs to be or who is assigned to review, or if you're assigning this to a team. So the right people will get the notification. We haven't implemented the actual complex rules inside the bot yet, which is an interesting thing to do in the future, to have the bot actually implement your rules. And it could be much smarter than what you can do in GitHub or other systems. For example, you have the Jira context, right? If this is a bug, you need this kind of review. If this is a refactor or a non-functional task, you need that kind of review. But yes, the bot is able to alert the right people and make sure that whenever someone's hands, they get the alert, they get context. One thing I glossed over is that we show when we tell you there's a review waiting for you, we also tell you how long it's going to take you. We like estimated review time, using some machine learning models to basically let you know this is going to take you 2 to 5 minutes. Probably you can do this between meetings or in your Slack time, or this is a review that is going to take you 30 minutes or 60 minutes. You probably need time for it. Don't even go there to see this wall of red and green and get up and say, oh, I don't have time for this right now. The chatbot currently supports MS Teams and Slack. Interesting to see about supporting others, or enabling a webhook API to basically let their own edge, their own IM edge. But currently, we support MS Teams and Slack. So recording, Max, are we sharing the recording post the event?
Oh, actually don't know, but I think so.
So definitely I'm happy to share. My email is yishai@linearb.io. You can also see my contact details in the, let me also type it here. reach out to me on email or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share the slide.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I see great feedback for your slides as well as for your podcast in the chat.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
All right. Looks like there's nothing else coming in. So in this
Okay,
case,
so maybe finally an invitation. We have a free forever tier of our product for dev teams. Just go to applearner.io/register, and you can start measuring these things. Like I said, free forever for a single team. And also happy to invite anyone to join our community, the Dev Interrupted community, Discord, and a podcast. Really great conversations going on there. So happy to meet you there as well.
thank you very much. I wish you a great day.